Welcome back to the Warehouse Podcast, everyone. My name is Elijah. We're here. It is Monday, July 7th. It is my girlfriend's mother's birthday, so happy birthday, Miss O'Neill. Um, yeah, we're in a good place. The Orioles just swept the Braves, and you know, good place is caveated by just the usual, like the Orioles are not having a good season. But that said, that this is one of the happier times that we've had this season with this sweep here. Charlie Morton went back and did his thing against his old team, which was pretty cool. They gave him a nice welcome back on the board. Um, Another great start from Trevor Rogers. Dean Kramer didn't really have it, but the team rallied behind him. This is the kind of series that I guess good teams have is you win in a couple different forms. There's some good pitching, there's some good hitting. It kind of alternates, it gives and takes, and different people step up on different days. That's what you love to see, and the Orioles did that. That said, they did it against a Braves team that is not, uh, let's just say, not having a great year. They're very much similar. They're very similarly placed to us in the grand scheme of baseball, whereas they've been a dominant force for the last couple years and just inexplicably have not been good, have struggled with injuries, some have, had reasons here and there, but just frankly, like it's just a cursed season for them too. Um, but what I did want to do was I wanted to step on here today and I wanted to highlight somebody uh, who is just kind of I don't even want to say an unsung hero because everyone's been calling him that for months now on our team. But just, this was on nobody's radar that he was going to do what he is doing for us. I feel like I personally have not given him enough attention, um, and just thought he deserved his day. So here's to Ramon Laureano. I was trying to figure out what to do for this podcast, and I went and listened to the Orioles Chill, the latest episode, and Laureano is on there and he says bro 33 times in like it's like a 20-minute video or so. And kind of the amusing thing about that is that it makes him sound like a surfer bro and all this stuff. But I have noticed that players who speak English as their second language, they have words like this that are kind of a cue as a filler while they get their words together a little bit. Not to say he doesn't speak English well, it's perfectly fine. But just kind of a little funny note, and the Orioles Twitter made an additional post kind of making fun of him. They had a bro counter, quote unquote, and counted the number of times that he said bro during this episode. But anyway, I digress. Laureano, phenomenal baseball player, seems like a super cool dude, really interesting. I remember the early season interview with Melanie Newman talking about liking to go out without shoes on and just kind of feel the grass beneath his toes, and it helps him release toxins. And uh, he's a little bit out there, but I think most baseball players are. You have to have a certain you have to be super super committed to whatever gets you in the zone. And he is that. Clearly he seems like a pretty intense dude. Uh, I don't know. I'm a big fan. I think he's a cool character. He's been kind of funny to see like unfold in front of us this year because he's never been very loud spoken. He's never been somebody who we have seen a lot of in the media, I wouldn't say. He's just been just kind of an under the radar figure. Like obviously he was an all-star and he, had this big PED suspension, all sorts of stuff. So he's been a character in baseball, but not really because of the words he said. Um, that said, the reason we are here talking about him today is not because he likes to say bro. The reason we're here is because I have in front of me the Fangraphs leaderboard for hitters in 2025 with 200 or more plate appearances. And on it, Ramon Laureano is 27th in WRC plus with 138. That is 38% better than league average. Funny enough, right next to him is another good friend of ours, Ryan O'Hearn. Right next to him is another good friend of ours, an old friend, Kyle Stowers. Stowers obviously has had a down arrow pointing next to his name. If I were to pull this up over the last month, it would look very, very different. But Kyle Stowers is the Miami Marlins All-Star, so wanted to shout him out. Um, and give him his flowers where due. Stowers has done he had a wildly impressive beginning to this year. How sustainable that is, I think pitchers are going to figure him out to an extent. We have seen a very, very rapid downturn. We'll see kind of where he settles out. I'm sure his true talent is not, striking out a 38% clip or whatever it's been over the last month, but I'm sure it's also not a 200 WRC plus. So curious to see how Stowers is doing, but happy for him. He's getting this win in being, the Marlins representative to the 2025 All-Star game. It's a huge honor, and he's clearly worked hard for it. Um, that said, I'm pretty happy with Trevor Rogers right now. So we'll see. We will watch careers progress, and we'll all have some hot takes about it in the future. But back to Ramon Laureano. The other names right around here, he's just ahead of Jacob Wilson, who's going to be the starting shortstop for the AL All-Star team. Wilson's been hitting unbelievably well. He's two spots in front of Jazz Chisholm Jr., Pete Crow Armstrong, young phenom for the Cubs. And then names above the Laureano, O'Hearn, Stowers trio are Matt Olson, Eugenio Suarez, Rafael Devers, Byron Buxton, Seiya Suzuki. Lots and lots of names who have been really good at baseball for a long time. Laureano is doing an unbelievably good job this year, clearly. I did want to highlight a couple things. He's got this 346 OBP. League average right now is a 316. So, getting on base 30%, or I'm sorry, 30 points, 30 points more often. I'm losing words a little bit there, but 30 points more often than the league average. Getting on base at this really, really strong clip. That's bolstered by an 8.9% walk rate. League average is right around 8. So, definitely he is drawing walks. He is hitting the ball well. The 274 batting average, whatever that means to you. Um, and then I think more importantly is this 505 slugging, right? His 505 slugging, that's against a 399 league average. That is 3 thousandths, just 3 points below Juan Soto at 508. That is 5 points above Joe Adell, who has had a phenomenal start to this season. And all in all, just want to shout out against that same group of hitters with 200 or more plate appearances. That is 26th in the majors. He's just kind of a top 30 bat right now. Um, and if you look at top 30 bat in the like statistical sense and say how many players should a top 30, or I guess how many top 30 players should a team have? Each team should have one. There are 30 teams. So, seeing Laureano's name up here, in the WRC plus sense in particular, right next to Ryan O'Hearn, we've got two guys in this top 30. That's pretty exciting. You are stacking a lot of offensive production into two guys in your lineup. Um, and yeah, I mean, that's phenomenal. It should not go without shouting out, and that's why we're here. Um, we'll note that you can see here Laureano is running a 344 BABIP. League average on batting average on balls in play is it's right about 300. I think the biggest thing to say about this is he's very likely due for some regression. He is I'll talk about this a little bit more in a minute, but the profile that he has created, the batted ball profile, is one that will get better results for BABIP purposes. He is pulling the ball in the air at a phenomenal clip. Again, I'll talk about that more later. But this also says there's a chance he could have some regression. I do think that looking at this 28% K rate, which is very, very high, that there's space for regression there as well. I think pretty much no one on the list above him. I guess Riley Green is running a 31% K rate. The aforementioned Stowers, those are the only two people higher on this list who have a higher K rate. So definitely think that, that is an indication that there is swing and miss in his game and could potentially be some regression here in the overall offensive profile. But that said, even if he is due for some regression, I don't think any of us expected him to be a hitter that was, batting at 40% better than league average, 38% to be exact. So part of me was a little bit curious to know, like, just as I am wont to do, go look under the hood a little bit, see if he's changed anything this year, what really has been successful for him. And if you come and you go like just look at Baseball Savant, the standard, um, the standard thing that us less informed fans do, there's nothing that impressive here. The entire package is clearly working well. But even relative to last year, he hasn't made any huge strides in any one particular area. Um, and he doesn't have exceptional bat speed. It's like very, very slightly above league average, I guess would be like 55th percentile. He doesn't have incredible hard hit rates. The average exit velocities are in the 26th percentile, like really not that good. Um, so it's kind of like, where is this guy's production coming from? I do think there's a valid question there. Um, I think the one thing that jumped out to me immediately is you go ahead and you compare his chase rates relative to last year's. Last year he was chasing at a 30% clip, which was, I don't know. He wasn't qualified last year, so they don't show the actual number on Savant, but somewhere in the 35th, 40th percentile. Um, and this year he's dropped that 8 percentage points. He's chasing balls, at about a 1 in 5 clip, 22.5%. And that is 81st percentile. He's dropped that 8% from last year about, and that's a huge, huge difference. The Orioles, you will hear if you talk to, or if you're listening to any Orioles podcast, will always be harping on how the Orioles value swing decisions, swing decisions, swing decisions. And that's something they really try to instill in players. That's something they scout at the college levels, all of these things. Um, and clearly, they've been pushing Laureano. In fact, as a matter of fact, in the chill episode I was watching earlier, they Kauser brought up swing decisions with Laureano at one moment. This is clearly something these guys are thinking about. It's very much an important part of their game, and Laureano's ability to cut down on chase this year has impacted every other part of his game. And to see, like, if you go back through previous years on Savant here, let's see, in 2020, he was 74th percentile, but that is the only time he's done anything like this. Um, and that was the shortened COVID season, which is, obviously a very different subset, and a lot of weird things happened that year. um, yeah, so I guess weird things happening. I'll just shout out Jose Iglesias, who had a torrid, torrid season for us that year. I think he hit like 380 or whatever. But I digress. So, you know, really, really impressive chase rates, impressive plate discipline. You will see here, like the whiff rates are still pretty high. He's whiffing at 28%. That's, I guess, 2 and 7. It's not quite 1 and 3, not quite 1 and 4. Um, but did I say, yeah, I said 2 and 7. Okay. So it he will swing and miss. And that's one of the interesting things about the modern game is swinging and missing is not necessarily a bad thing. You know, I think that it's it's an accepted part as long as the damage you are doing is like living up to it. You have to make up for it elsewhere, and he clearly is doing that. The other things I wanted to shout out here, his barrel rate really is pretty high, close to the 70th percentile. That is the 69th to be exact. Very nice. His expected slugging, 69th. The hard hit and launch angle sweet spot are 60th and 61st, so slightly above league average. He is doing some things well, and like I said, that walk rate is 54th percentile, slightly above league average. So he's drawing walks at a good clip. Um, I'm not even going to talk about defense today. He's a solid defender, particularly with the arm. I guess his range has looked awful this year, which I didn't actually realize, but he's making up for it with his arm, so we'll let him go. Um, but yeah, so like the overall package here is he's not somebody who impacts the ball in some super elite way. He you see the launch angle sweet spot, you see hard hit, you see barrel. These are slightly above league average. All in all, he is like cutting down the amount of bad pitches he's swinging at, and when he is making contact, he is I don't want to say fully maximizing, but he is doing pretty good things with that contact. He's, converting it at good launch angles, and he's matching that with, subpar exit velocities, but he's getting what he can out of it. Um, so yeah, I was kind of like, okay, let's just look at this a tiny bit more. Are there any other real changes? Um, and I think one thing that really jumped out to me is, more than anything, like I guess they have slightly different rates. Fangraphs is using Sports Info Solutions, but that chase rate is way down. Fangraphs, I'm looking at O swing. But kind of the interesting thing about it is he's also swinging in the zone a bit less. This 63.3%. It's pretty close to his league average, but last year he was up at 73%. The year before, 64.4. So uh, prior to last year, he was uh, less aggressive in the zone, and that was a bit more in line with what he's doing this year. Last year, he was hyper aggressive in the zone. Um, and, his zone contact rate was good. It's pretty much the same last year, around that 80 percentile mark. So I think that, like overall, nothing in here has changed too much except the fact that he's just swinging less often. Um, and that has clearly helped this offensive profile as a whole. The swing percentage last year was 52.3%, this year down at 44.4. That is below his league average. And besides his rookie season and the shortened 2020 that I already talked about, that is the lowest rate that he has swung at in his entire career. So, a lot of that is being cut out on pitches off the plate, on balls that he normally would have chased in the past, and it's yielding really good results. Yeah, you have to be pretty thrilled with it. Um, yeah, okay. So the next thing I wanted to talk about a little bit is I wanted to just, I talked about maximizing contact, and the thing I want to highlight here is he is pulling the ball in the air at a 28% clip. Again, like two in every seven or so. And I know that's right, but I'm curious what that exact number is. Yeah, so two and seven is 28.5, 28.6%. So close to that. He's pulling the ball in the air. I did an episode on Cedric Mullins earlier this season talking about when he was in his torrid April, uh, what exactly he was doing to get there. And it was kind of a similar thing. Mullins does not have elite bat speed. He does not have really high exit velocities, but what he did was he pulled the ball in the air, particularly at Camden Yards, that does well. Um, I should say for Laureano, it's not quite the same deal. At Camden Yards, that wall still hurts, even though it is shorter than it was last year. But pulling the ball in the air does good things for you. Uh, there are players who built their entire careers off of pulling the ball in the air, a la Isaac Paredes, Alex Bregman, some of these guys who uh, you could kind of say they've got noodle bats a little bit. They don't have high exit velocities, but they have efficient contact. Pulling the ball in the air is the way to do damage, and Ramon Laureano is doing it at an elite rate to kind of illustrate that. Oh my gosh. Um, oh boy, I lost it. There we go. Okay. So to illustrate that same 200 plate appearance threshold, because Laureano is just above it because he wasn't a full-time player at the beginning of this year. His 28% right here, that is good for 15th in the majors. The names above him, Salvador Perez, Kyle Schwarber, Andrew Benintendi, who's not that impressive, but Eugenio Suarez, Jose Ramirez, our guy Cedric Mullins, Spencer Torkelson, Alex Bregman, Max Muncy, the Dodgers version, Anthony Santander, Danny Jansen, Reese Hoskins, Isaac Paredes, and then Cal Raleigh, who obviously, is hitting the ball quite well this year. Um, Pulling the ball in the air does good things for you. The names on this list are good ones. I don't want to Man, I think Andrew Benintendi is actually performing well this year, if I'm remembering correctly. I'm gonna load him so I'm not lying to myself. Yeah, he's been solid this year. 706 OPS. That's like league average. Never mind. Um, so ignoring Andrew Benintendi, everyone else on this list can bang. And I would say like Cedric Mullins might actually be the weakest name on this list above Laureano. Maybe you could say Salvador Perez has had a rough year, but Perez's offensive profile has clearly worked over the course of his career. And all of these people are sluggers, so if you are going to, try to make what you can happen out of somewhat a limited skill set. Again, not elite bat speed, not elite exit velocities. This is kind of the way to do it. Um, and yeah, Laureano's been very good at it. And I think like if you kind of step back and say, well, why wasn't this happening last year? Kind of what was different? I noticed like one kind of small change that I think is worthwhile. I don't think it's necessarily a uh, like worthwhile discussing. I don't think it's a game changer or anything like that, but I think it's intriguing. I think the primary thing that I've noticed, I've got for those not watching, on Baseball Savant, you can go ahead and you can pull up graphics of basically of the average swing path that Laureano or anyone else is going to take. Um, And I think the interesting thing, looking at Laureano's 2024 against his 2025, is that these swings look incredibly. Oh my gosh, my screen's freaking out. These things look incredibly similar. I mean, they are virtually the same swing between 2024 and 2025. I think that what that says to me is okay, he didn't really make a swing change. Once again, he has gone ahead and he has improved swing decisions. Um, Pretty much everything about the swing, I guess, metrically is the same. The tilt on his bat path has gotten 1 degree shallower this year, 37 against 36. I think that's pretty much negligible. Um, last year he was attacking at a 2 degree to the pole on his average intercept point. This year it's at 0 degrees. I'm not sure why that is currently showing 2 degrees on the graphic. This year it's at 0 degrees. Can confirm. And then the other thing is, the average attack angle is at 17 degrees on both seasons, slightly above league average. I think that all in all, this is very, very much the same hitter. I think the thing that has changed is the decisions and the very, very small thing I'm about to point out to you, and that is in the box, he has actually moved back almost 2 inches, more inch and a half. And I guess I should say he has moved deeper in the box about an inch and a half, and he's moved about 3.5 inches off the plate. Um, I will say he's also like he's closed his feet a little bit in terms of distance between him and closed angle. He has, I guess, turned himself. Man, I've never had to describe what a closed stance is. Or open stance is the old Tony Bautista, like left foot way out toward third base. Closed stance is Giancarlo Stanton, more of the back of your shoulder facing the pitcher versus the front of your shoulder. I guess that's the way to say it. I don't know why that was so hard. But he's closed himself off a little bit and he's moved just the slightest bit further off the plate and back. I think, the thing that I notice with that is, that 2 degree pull. Um, Essentially, he has turned his body in a little bit. I guess I can't see exactly on these graphics where his stride foot is at the time of his swing after taking the step. But what I can say is that, that slight change in the attack angle, or attack direction. I'm sorry, I getting these words straight. That slight change in the attack direction could partially be because he has closed himself off a tiny bit. But then the other thing about it is he's hitting the ball, you know, relatively similar distance in front of his center of mass. So like if you are standing in the box, it's, as you're rotating through, it's like where you're catching the ball out in front of you personally. But it's about 2 inches closer to the front of the plate. And I think the thing that that says to me is it is this very, very slight amount of extra time to recognize what pitch is coming at you. It is a very, very small amount of extra time to, I guess, react, and like adjust your swing path to wherever the ball is. Um, and yeah, it's kind of a similar thing. Like he was slightly out in front of his center of mass last year, slightly further out in front. And that could also lead to pull. You're just further into your swing. It's going to keep rotating toward that pull side. Um, so I thought this was pretty interesting. He actually like has lost some bat speed relative to last year. But yeah, very, very much like everything about him this year is the same guy. You just see that he is going ahead and not swinging at bad pitches. And I think not swinging at bad pitches, there's this metric on Baseball Savant called the ideal attack angle percentage, and kind of you say your uh, preferred ideal attack angle is between 5 and 20 degrees, a slight amount of lift as you are coming up into the ball. Um, and that percentage has gone up 5.6% for him. I don't want to say it's like thrillingly awesome because it's about league average, but at the same time, I think that is a manifestation of swinging at better pitches. If you are going to not chase the slider down and out of the zone, then it's easier to get on plane with a fastball, at your letters. I think that uh, by removing the pitches that you have to take a suboptimal swing at, by removing the pitches that are outside of the zone, you are inherently putting yourself in a better position to get your best swing off, to get the swing off that will put you at that ideal attack angle. Um, Something I do want to note here is that despite the fact that, he is uh the attack direction on these swings is 0 degrees. His his pull air rates have gone up as I just talked about. I think the interesting thing about that, the pull percentage itself has not gone up too meaningfully. It is the highest of his career, but only about 3% higher than last year. Um, I think, the pull air percentage, what I see from that is more that the pulled ground ball percentage has gone down. Um, when he is meeting these balls a little bit further out front and getting them to his pull side, he is staying on that ideal attack angle and being able to lift the ball. I think I think, the attack angle side of this is more substantial in contributing to this pull air percentage than the attack direction, I guess. Um, and so I just wanted to note that I like his swing is a little bit less geared toward pulling this year relative to what it was last year, but at the same time, he is pulling more efficiently. Once again, there's that word efficiency, but he is pulling the ball in the air more effectively. He's pulling it on the ground less. Um, so yeah, really good stuff from Ramon. And once again, just like the stats that this guy is putting up in general, I mean, it's phenomenal to see, you know, hitting 274, OBP 346, slugging 505. I guess relative to the Orioles, that is he's leading the team in pretty much everything. Um, Let me get it up so I can say with confidence. So tied with O'Hearn at the top with a 138 WRC plus. In terms of slugging, he is leading the team. In terms of weighted on base average, he is tied with Ryan O'Hearn again. His expected WOBA is a tiny bit less, but yeah, man, just you love to see what he's doing this year. His 232 isolated power is fourth on the team behind Westberg, Chadwick Trump, because I put no sort of qualifier on this. Uh, Let me give it 100 plate appearances. Okay. Uh, Isolated power behind Cowser, Westberg, And those are the only two. Again, walking at a really good clip. Uh, Fifth on the team, tied with Gunnar Henderson. Just, like it's a complete offensive package right now. The defense has been good enough. Fangraphs is saying that he's been slightly below league average, not all too bad there. And all in all, yeah, I mean, if you would have told me that we'd be less than halfway through the season and Ramon Laureano would be sitting on almost two F WAR, he's at 1.7 right now. I don't know, I would have shaken your hand. I would have said thank you very much. That's wonderful to hear. I wouldn't have expected it, but I'd be happy to hear it for sure. And I'm happy to be witnessing it in real time. Um, yeah, so Laureano, I think the Orioles are in a really, really fascinating situation with him. He has the club option next year for $6.5 million. We're paying him a very, very below market rate for this type of production. Once again, the value of one WAR on free agent market is typically about $8 million. So him being at 1.7 already, he could be, making something on the order of 13, 14 mil for this like half a season that he's played. So if he does truly end up in the range of 4 F WAR, he will have put up a season that is, man, quick math, bear with me. Yeah, I guess like 8 times more valuable than what we're paying him. We're paying him like $4 million this year, and 4 WAR would be worth, yeah, 32 mil. So, rough math, like we are vastly underpaying this guy. We're getting some wonderful, wonderful production, and then we have a club option on him for $6.5 million next year. You go ahead and you look at this team next year. I think it's I love Cedric Mullins, I really do, but um, he is an aging skill set, and I think he is kind of already maximizing what he is, and it's only going to go down from here. I say that with all due respect. He has turned his career around in an amazing way, but these small, speedy outfielders are not necessarily an archetype that ages well. Um, that said, again, next year we are going to be coming in with probably an outfield of, I think Tyler O'Neill is probably opting into his contract at this point, or I guess not opting out. It's an opt out clause. Um, we will have Colton Cowser. We'll have Heston Kjerstad, but I don't know what you count on Heston Kjerstad for at this point. Um, and you look at that and you say, dang, it would be pretty nice to have an outfielder who can bang and only is going to cost us $6.5 million. Laureano will be that. That said, we do have the likes of Judd Fabian at AAA. Dylan Beavers is swinging an extremely hot bat nowadays. Um, we have talent. There is Enrique Bradfield Jr. He will not be ready for the start of next season, but some of these other guys you could start to see working their way into the majors in August, September, and getting a little run before we close out this season. So you look at that, you say we do have a little bit of talent. At the same time, I don't think we have the same upside that we thought this outfield unit had coming into this year. I will own up to it. I had it wrong. I mean, I looked at this offensive unit or this outfield unit as like I don't know. I thought it was going to be top three in the game or so. I thought it was going to be absolutely unbelievably awesome. And it very much has not been that, partially because of Cowser's injury, partially because of various Tyler O'Neill injuries, partially because of Cedric Mullins' recent struggles, um, very, very largely because Heston Kjerstad just was really bad at baseball, and then we sent him to the minor leagues. Um, there a lot of things have not worked out the way that we've wanted. So I think that you're in a position where this guy provides not only security but upside at this position heading into next year in a situation where you do not have neither security nor upside at that position. Um, and then at the same time, because he's really, really good and really cheap and has club control for another year, man, you could get a lot for a guy like this at the trade deadline. There is going to be someone out there who will look at Ramon Laureano and say, dang, my team would be a lot better with that guy on it. And he has club control. And I am trying to make a playoff run. Right now, Orioles, let's come to the table and let's talk. I think that pretty much either way you go here, assuming you don't screw up the trade. There is always that caveat, but I don't think you're necessarily going to be wrong in either direction. If you trade Laureano, you will need to make up for that this offseason. That is very simple. You can count on Tyler O'Neill to come in and hit the ball extremely well when he is healthy. I think he will do that. We saw a home run the other day in wherever it was in Atlanta. Hello. Saw a home run the other day. He can hit the ball extremely, extremely hard. That is what all those muscles are geared to do. At the same time, yeah, it's just like how much can you count on him for? You really, I don't think, can count on Kerstead to even be an everyday major leaguer at this point. You don't know how Dylan Beavers will take. Judd Fabian has tons of swing and miss. So, if you're going to go and get Kyle Tucker in the offseason, yeah, like I don't care about Ramon Laureano. Send him wherever the heck you want. But, this will be a substantial loss given the uncertainty around this crew. Um, I am not one of the people who's going to argue the merit of buying or selling, like trying to bolster this team at this current deadline. I no longer am in a position where I think that that's a valid discussion. The Orioles would need to do unbelievable things and things that have literally never been done in order to make the playoffs this year. We are in a hole. We are the exact distance from the last wild card spot that we were a month ago, if I remember correctly. We finished this sweep, and I think it was 7.5 games back of the wild card. A month ago or so, it was 7.5 games back of the wild card. We have been playing better, and we have made up no ground whatsoever. I think that this is all like I don't know. The writing is not on the wall. It is on the wall. It's on the floor. It's written like on the inside of our glasses that we're trying to look through. The answer is there. The Orioles need to sell off pieces in order to like expiring contracts do nothing for us right now. The only thing that makes Ramon Laureano interesting is that he's not an expiring contract. Um, but at the same time, that is what makes him wildly valuable, not only to us, but to other teams. So if somebody wants to come and give you, you know, if the Phillies show up and say Andrew Painter is yours for the price of Ramon Laureano, I think you have to take that. Like that Painter is a foundational rotation piece and under control for many, many years. These kinds of things, and I should stress, I don't think the Phillies would do that necessarily because corner outfield is not the need, center field is the need. But um, we just trade with them all the time, so they are what popped into my head. um, but so I guess I digress. But like, if you have the opportunity to turn this valuable piece into another valuable piece that also, like has upside and has team control and, fills out the rotation, which let's be honest, even if the Orioles go into next year with Tyler O'Neill, Colton Cowser, Heston Kjerstad, Dylan Beavers, and I don't know, a Mark Canna or something like that. Even if you go into next year with that, I think you're still in like an okay position and likely a better position than you are in the rotation. I think we have a lot of really, really talented arms at single A and double A, but I do not think that those guys are really knocking on the door. And I think that we've seen pretty significant regression from Chase McDermott, particularly in the throwing strikes department. Brandon Young is TBD. He hasn't gotten enough major league time yet. Cade Povich, he has some wonderful days. He has some really bad days. And I think that like the people pushing the envelope to join this major league rotation are not exactly sure things. Whereas somebody like a Painter is a bona fide, could be the best pitcher in the American League in a year or two. That could happen very, very quickly. And so I think you have to be open to it. I think you have to listen. You have to work the market. And ultimately, you can decide that's not going to work. And I don't like what's available in free agency. So we are keeping Laureano. And if you do that, I'm totally happy. I'm very happy. I think that, you, you know, I think that you could be correct in either direction, and you'll be just fine. The Orioles have a means of opportunistically selling at this deadline. I think that's the best way to say it. We have a lot of pieces that are going to be extremely valuable. Um, we have the things that are like most sought after at the deadline in terms of, you know, like somebody who destroys the baseball in Ryan O'Hearn, multiple bullpen pieces that are on expiring contracts, Sir Anthony Dominguez, Gregory Soto. Both of those are going to be very valuable. Um, and then some arms, some starting pitchers who are on expiring contracts. I think Charlie Morton is working his way into a valuable trade piece if he continues doing it, of course. But that's a lot to say. The Orioles have an interesting decision to make here with Laureano. I do think that I you, this is what's so funny about podcasting is I am here and I was like, I feel like I need to put myself on the spot and make a decision. And I'm just talking to myself, right? There's nobody here like giving me feedback in any way, shape, or form. And I didn't have to do this. I didn't have to put my name out there, but I feel compelled to because, I know that that's probably more interesting for you. And that way, everyone can come and laugh at me in a month when Ramon Laureano does, when the Orioles do the exact opposite of what I said. But that said, I am inclined to think that the Orioles are going to hold on to Ramon Laureano. I think that the uncertainty with Tyler O'Neill is probably a little bit more than they were hoping for. Um, I I think I will say I think it's absolutely ridiculous to judge the contract or O'Neill as a whole in the way that some fans have based on, it's been like I guess 3 months of the baseball season now. Let's see, April, yeah. April, May, June. Um, like we knew the guy gets hurt. This was clearly a weird one with his neck and everything. But at the same time, he could come back next year and he could hit 40 home runs and be like I don't know, be a really, really legit and all-star level, superstar player. So I don't want to like say O'Neal is nothing, but I do think that the uncertainty with O'Neal probably, if I were Mike Elias and co, would freak me out to an extent. I think that it would say somebody who can be a right-handed bat and be playing every day and be hitting the ball very, very well. I think like Laureano's contract even helps you be more comfortable eating the salary of O'Neal if you need to, because it is so low. You can accept a little bit lower production from him because you are getting more production from O'Neal or from Laureano. Um, and yeah, I think that even if you go get Kyle Tucker, you are going to sign Kyle Tucker for Kyle Tucker's money. It is going to be 500, $600 million. And that's not to say I actually think the Orioles will do that, but that is to say that if you go to free agent market to go ahead and replace what you have found here in Laureano, you're going to pay for that. And, the chances that you strike gold again and find like next time if it is a Mark Canha or someone who's supposed to be a platoon bat at this stage in their career, and they come out and hit 38% better than league average against both hands, then if you can do that twice in a row, you're gonna get paid a lot of money as a GM. People don't do that very often, and that is certainly it shouldn't be the expectation. Um, and you should expect that whoever you sign in free agency is going to be more commensurate with their true talent level. So all that to say, I think they're keeping Laureano. I think that the production at this cost is too attractive to us. I do think that we have every intention of competing next year. I think that, you could still supplement this core in the offseason. You could still supplement this core um, even at the trade deadline if, you see something opportunistic. Like I I think that the Orioles will likely do what most teams do nowadays, where they buy some pieces, sell some pieces, and just kind of shuffle things around more so than take everyone on my team because our team sucks and just give me prospects. Like that's not how teams operate too often anymore. Um, yeah. So I think Laureano is a Baltimore Oriole on opening day 2026. That's my hot take. Uh, you have seen some of the stuff he's done. The biggest thing is just chasing. Like I will bring it back up. He just does not chase baseballs outside the zone anymore. and that does really, really good things for him. Where is it? Oh yeah, 22.1%. That's wonderful. Another thing I did notice as I was looking at this, I think a lot of that gain has probably come from you can kind of look at values of each hitter against a given pitch. Um, and over the last 3 years, he's been substantially negative against sliders. The last 3 years prior to this year, he's pretty positive. I think that's both in terms of like both in terms of decisions, but uh, or I guess it all comes down to decisions. But he is laying off of pitches that he was previously not able to do any sort of damage on, and he's hitting the hangers better. Um, so just like across the board, he's been eaten up by cutters this year, which I think is kind of fascinating. But across the board, positive pitch values and much less chase. So. It's a lot of rambling. Ramon Laureano is very good at baseball. We're happy to have him here. Uh, and I think I'm gonna get out of here. The Orioles have an off day today, and then we're gonna start a little series against. I'm not even remembering right now. Who do the Orioles play? I want to say it's a blue team. Oh yeah, the New York Mets. They're blue. I count that as a half point for me. Yeah, so Mets are coming to town. It'll be super fun. We're gonna get to see Juan Soto. I think that's all you can really ask. As a fan to watch your team play against the best. We will do it the next 3 days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at Camden Yards. And yeah, I don't know. We will talk to you again soon. My name is Elijah. This has been the Warehouse Podcast. Have a good day, everyone. Oh, and go O's.